We have an inner healing interview today, and I'm really excited for you all to meet my friend Bree. I've known her for a long time. We took a songwriting class together in like 2006.
I think so.
And we've both been writing ever since. She's a professional artist. She has albums and she's sang at tons of places and she plays piano as well. And she is a worship leader. She's actually a worship leader in Rancho Cucamonga, not too far from me here in California. And she's not only the worship director there, she's the business manager. So she's wearing multiple hats at a small church, as many do. So today we want to just talk a little bit about her faith journey and her thoughts. It's kind of fun because worship leaders don't actually get to talk to each other that often. We're all stationed at different posts and serving at different places on Sundays, but we all have these experiences that are similar. So it's really fun to get to hear from a fellow leader, fellow entrepreneur, fellow artist, and just catch up with a friend that I haven't seen in a long time. So you can check out her at breenoble.com, I think, right? No? Yes?
BreeNobleMusic.com if you want the music.
There you go.
But yeah, and then my business is ProfitableMusician.com. So if you're a musician, check me out there.
Yes, and I love her, actually. I'm so excited I get to be on her podcast too. I love listening to the Profitable Musician podcast. I've learned a ton from it. It's always a really good reminder to get my crap together and to keep going.
Yeah, and then, I mean, another thing that I got started in all of this as a musician, obviously, but I also am a big advocate for females in the music industry. So I started this thing called Women of Substance, which was like for my own enjoyment of music by female artists. And it grew into a thing, which is a podcast. So if you like music by female artists, Women of Substance podcast, wospodcast.com is
the original
my thing.
podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, that one's been going forever. That's so rad.
2007. So like not very long after I met you, I started.
Right.
And actually I'd started it before that as like an online radio station, like mostly for myself, literally to listen to music I liked at work.
Mm-hmm.
And then like people started following and I was like, oh, people like this. Okay.
Wow. See, that's how things start. We got to do
Yes.
something that's true to ourselves. And then that's what ends up taking off.
I agree.
That's so cool. So, as a listener, if you can't tell that me and Bree are a little bit alike, we are. So since you mentioned like the advocacy for female entrepreneurs and artists, do you also have a heart for specifically female worship leaders in the church? Do you think that we experience any unique challenges or any differences in our experience as leaders, or what are your thoughts on that?
You know, it's interesting because I work at a church that is a lot more conservative around women in leadership. So I think it depends on the denomination that you're in. I ended up here. I love the people there at this church, but I might not have necessarily chosen this denomination just because of the strictness of women in leadership. And the thing is, we're a California branch, so we're a lot more lax than like other people in the denomination, maybe in the Midwest. And so I've had some experiences where someone would come from the Midwest, like a leader in the denomination, and my pastor would say, like, just so you know, back there they probably would never have a female worship leader. And I'm like, ugh. So that like made me feel really weird and uncomfortable in the service. But I also am like, hey, I'm going to show them like what they're missing, So I think that, that can be a thing if there is that kind of feeling about women in leadership in a church. And as worship leaders, we are not necessarily like doing teaching or anything, but I always try to weave what I do into what's being taught up there with the sermon and stuff. And I always try to kind of give them the through line, like, hey, I maybe mention a few of the lyrics of the song and say like, this comes directly from this Bible verse, or, this verse is tied exactly to the message that we're doing. And I read some of the words and, so I do think that we are leading people and teaching people in our own way in church. And so I think there's a lot less need for like advocacy for women in leadership in the church anymore because there are so many churches that are open to it, but there are plenty of churches that aren't. So, just do your thing and do it well. And it's going to fly the flag for, how women can contribute in the church setting.
Yeah, that's so good to point out. It's so true. Like part of it is the denominational teaching, but part of it is just cultural and location, and what people pick up on, what they're used to, what they subconsciously think. It's not just all theology. A lot of it's like just, what they've grown up around, what they've absorbed from culture.
Yep. And there are some churches around here that don't believe that women should lead worship. And when I first moved to this town, I was doing the whole church shopping thing, which I hate. Before I had the job and all that. And I did go to a church where I could pretty much tell, the worship leader was a male, and and it was like a solo male up there. Like nobody was up there even like playing keyboards or anything with them. And I was like, I have a feeling this church believes that women shouldn't be on the stage. And I was like, I can't go to this church. Like, even if the pastor was amazing, I just can't.
No, I can't. A personal conviction. I just disagree with that theology too much, and I think it does harm. So I can't do it. But who's to say? Some of us feel drawn to places that we don't completely agree with at every point. So it's not like I'm prescriptively saying that for others. But I don't know. I've been through too much stuff with my own leadership and calling and gifts, and at this point, I'm like about to turn 40. I know who I am. I know what I believe. Not that it's not going to grow and change and shift, but I'm a leader that's a female. So what are you going to do?
Yep. Yeah. No, got to follow your calling.
Yeah.
Some people aren't going to like it. That's okay.
So tell us a little more about yourself, like including your family and some, recent music business endeavors or anything.
Sure. So let's see. I grew up in Modesto, California. Well, I grew up in the Bay Area, then Modesto, California. Migrated down to Southern California via Santa Barbara because I went to Westmont College. I met my husband there. And coincidentally, our daughter now goes there, and she's a senior. She's a senior in college. I can't even believe it. And so let's see. We actually met in choir in college. And so, he's musical too, but that's not his main gig. He's an English professor at Azusa Pacific. And that was how Andrea and I met, at the songwriting class at Azusa Pacific. And I have two daughters. One is a senior at Westmont. The other one is a sophomore in high school here in Rancho. And she's about to get her driver's license, which is insane.
Wow.
And she loves music. She's in choir, a bunch of choirs. She's taking voice lessons and stuff. So that's exciting that I've got one child. One child kind of followed after my husband, the one at Westmont. She's an English major, and she's thinking of potentially being an English teacher in high school. And then the other one's kind of following after me with the music stuff. So, and
sounds like they're also following after the typical birth order too.
Yeah, I suppose so. That's kind of funny. The first one is very much a type A personality, like very organized. Like her job at the college is to help the students with their study habits and stuff, and then the second one is more like the artistic, free spirit kind of person.
Funny how that happens so often.
Yeah, it's funny. But she sings with me sometimes at church. She runs all the slides, which is great, and runs the audio booth and everything. So, and let's see what else. So I've been working. I am a musician. I've been performing for years. I did the whole, I'm going to tour all over, and I dragged my kids with me when they were little. And then once I settled down, because it was really hard to tour anymore because they had stuff going on, then I was kind of working as a lay leader in church, as the head of the worship committee kind of thing, and on the team. And in the meantime, I was growing my business, like I said, with Women of Substance, and then eventually the Female Musician Academy, where I help musicians learn how to make more money, specifically females. I wanted to create that container for them, where we could talk about things that are specific issues that female artists deal with. And my Profitable Musician brand is all about helping musicians make more money, whether you're like a hobby artist and you just want to pay for all your instruments and all your, fun stuff that costs money when you're a musician, or if you really want to make a full-time living from it. So that's basically what I've been doing for the past 9 years. And then after COVID, I decided I really needed to get back out there and perform. And what better way to have a continuing gig than to work at a church? So, and the church really needed me at that point. They had not been able to find a worship leader. And so it worked out. I could do it part-time. And then when our pastor left, they needed someone to basically run all the administration at the church. So I took that over too. And I basically do that full time, but I've organized my time to work there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday. So I have times to work on my business. And my focus right now is like just really focusing in on our newsletter and our podcast, because those are just such helpful resources for musicians. And I just want to make those bigger and better and, get more support for them and everything so we can help more musicians.
Wow. So it sounds like, did you grow up Christian? Do you say I've always been Christian, or did you have a time where it kind of became real to you, or how did that look?
Yeah, I grew up Christian. From the earliest I can remember, I was going to Sunday school and stuff. I actually really have memories of being in the church nursery, which is crazy, that I can remember back that far. And I really kind of did the decision thing when I was about 7. We had someone come to our church, and that was the first time I've ever heard like, oh, you need to make a decision. And so I did that. And then, it didn't really it wasn't like life changing because I was 7, but so I just kind of kept moving forward, but I was like, I know I have this commitment. Right. And I really think the time when my faith grew the most was in college, and just really needing to, you went to a Christian college. So, you take all these classes that challenge the things that you learned from church and from your parents. And you're like, what? I thought it was this way, or I thought I always heard this. And then, or like there's these other alternative opinions about things, and they're very well researched. And how could I have been wrong about this? So it allows you to like grapple with the things and then come out of it. And sometimes students don't come out of it. They come out of it and they're like, I'm an atheist, Mm-hmm. And, so we hope at Christian colleges that doesn't happen, but sometimes it does. But it deepens your faith. It makes you claim your own faith and not just kind of ride on the coattails of your parents' faith.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that in college, having those conversations with so many, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds about how could they have taught us such wrong things about all this. And I think it's because a lot of us grew up in churches where maybe some of our Sunday school teachers or some of our curriculum materials had a little bit of like fundamentalisms like sprinkled in there. And of course, that's usually not accurate theology. And so then when we get to the collegiate level, we're reading better, more researched materials, and we're realizing that things were not explained to us correctly. And it is kind of jarring for a lot of students that age.
It is. I mean, even just the things that seem so obvious to me now, but like, it's like, oh, the Bible was translated by scribes. Like there could have been errors from what it was originally intended. Like no one ever taught me that in church.
Right. Or like all these Psalms that say of David doesn't mean he necessarily wrote them all.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, I remember having conversation. I never had like a crisis of faith as far as like the existence of God or whether Jesus is the savior. But my friends did. Mm-hmm. I mean, if all that other stuff could be wrong, what if this is wrong too? What about all the other people that believe different things? And I think your brain is like stretching and growing too at that age. Yep. Our brains don't even fully develop till we're 25. So it's like oh man, college is tumultuous.
Yes.
Wow. So tell us about maybe a time where you had an encounter with God or a divine intervention in your life or even in your career, or like a moment where God was really real to you.
I mean, I would say like there's a couple. There's one that's like very much like one of those like there was an angel or God was looking out for me. And I always use this in my talk when I speak. That's called "You Are My Vision." I talk about when I was like learning how to ski when I was about 9, I think 8 or 9. And so I'm visually impaired. So skiing, like, I don't know why I didn't think that wasn't a good idea, but I was like, well, everybody's skiing. Why wouldn't I, And so I was going down the hill and I had like gotten in front of my mom and I was going down the hill and all of a sudden I heard someone yell, duck. And so I did. And I like ducked down when I was skiing and I skied forward a little bit and then came back up and I looked back and my mom was like freaking out. I'm like, what's going on? She's like, did you see that tow rope? I'm like, no. She's like, you just went right under it. Like it would have like chopped your head off.
Wait, who yelled duck?
That's a thing, right? I don't know. There's like nobody around. And my mom said, I didn't hear anyone yell duck.
No way.
Yeah. So, I'm convinced that that was God protecting me in that situation.
Wow.
And I'll always remember that. Like that was like a physical manifestation. But I think the other time,
like auditorial, you like physically heard.
Yeah. You hear it. You're like, but
Wow.
no one else did.
Wow.
That's crazy. But the other time was when I was really sick with Crohn's disease and I was in the hospital because I was on IV prednisone, high doses, couldn't keep anything down, all that. And, times like that, a lot of times you come to a crossroads or it's like, well, either I'm going to like die here, I'm going to waste away because I can't keep any food down. Or like you basically kind of make a bargain with God in a way. It's like, God, if you pull me out of this, like this is my commitment. I want to have a ministry for you. I want my music to be a ministry for you going forward. And I remember making that commitment in the hospital bed.
What year was that?
Being so, so driven with purpose. Like, I don't want to die. I want to do this.
Yeah.
I want to not just die, like not die, but I want to have like the energy to go out there and perform. And in order to do that, I need to be able to keep food down. I need to get better.
Yeah. When was that? What year was that?
That was 2005.
Wow.
So it was not very long before I met you. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease when I was 29. And once when I had my first daughter, I was great when I was pregnant. And after I had her, it started getting way worse. I'm sure it was a hormonal thing. And by the time she was 7 months, I was in the hospital. Like I was so sick. I couldn't get off the couch, couldn't keep anything down, all that stuff. And so, yeah, I remember making that commitment that if I got out of that hospital bed, like my music would be all for God. And like that would be my focus. And that's what I did. After that, when I got better, I was able to that's when I created my You Are My Vision program. That's when I started writing my album. That's why I took that songwriting class with you, is that I wanted to put out my first Christian album and start touring.
Yeah. Wow, I love that. And I can relate because when I got really sick with like Lyme disease / celiac, it was a similar thing. I mean, I'm laying there, I'm coughing every time I lay down. My voice is it's being destroyed by like reflux and like just illness and weakness and neurological stuff. And my heart and everything would hurt and my hands and feet hurt. It was ridiculous. And I'm like writing songs, like touching one piano note at a time, like recording it into my laptop, like trying to write songs about like what my experience was, And I'm like, God, I don't know if I'm going to do music again, but if I do, if you make a way, like my voice is yours. I'm not going to worry about perfection anymore. Like it's probably never going to be the same. It's never going to be as easy. But if there's a way forward, like if you touch it, if you make it matter, if you anoint it, then it'll go where it's supposed to go and you use it the way you want to use it. And it's not like I had never wanted God to use my music before. It's not like I was not in surrender before.
Yep.
It's just kind of like a new level.
Oh, yeah. I get that. Totally.
Wow. Well, praise God that he like helped us both recover. I mean, both of us still, do you identify as still having chronic illness? I mean,
I mean, I do definitely. I'm actually in a really great remission right now. But when I first took my church job in 2022, I was struggling. Like I was going through a period where I would get really tired, in the middle of the day. And so I was trying having to do infusions and stuff. So going to the, hospital and get infusions every month. And ultimately it didn't really help. And I was able to just really work on my diet and get my medication just right to turn it around. And I don't have to do the infusions anymore because I don't think they were really helping. But I think it's something I'll always have to deal with, and I'll always really have to watch what I eat. And I can slip up, but it can't be for too long. You know what I mean? I can slip up
right.
for 2 weeks on vacation, but I can't let that continue because I will be sicker. And not only that, but I notice like inflammation issues in general. If
Right.
I'm eating a bunch of sugar, like when I'm on vacation, oh my gosh, like my limbs are aching because I'm
Yeah.
not watching what I'm eating.
Yeah. Yeah. Sugar is not good for people like us.
No, but I mean, to be fair, like I've had glaucoma since birth. So I've already had kind of a disability my entire life. So I guess I've always identified as that. I just think that, the time that I grew up in, it wasn't okay to admit that. Like now it's
Yeah.
like kind of
Now it's
cool
like,
and everybody understands and like
yeah.
there's things on job applications that like want to know if you identify as that, and like that was not the
Not so
case
they
when I.
can not hire you, but so they can actually help set you up for success.
Well, that's what they say. I'm still a little
Yeah.
suspicious, but you
Yeah.
know what I
It
mean?
depends. Yeah. It probably depends on who's reading it, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
But like there's advocacy now. There was literally no advocacy when I was growing up, and the ADA only came out in 1990. So it was right when I started college, and then they weren't there was nothing in college to even help me in any way
Right.
because it hadn't been developed yet.
Well, what are some of the things you talk about in Your My Vision? Like, how has this experience of disability and illness changed or affected your faith walk?
Um,
Or has it not? I mean,
I don't know if it's affected my faith walk. I think that I've always really identified with the passage about Paul having the thorn, and it's like I do feel like maybe I was given this to stay humble. And then, but there's always like, well, why would a good God give me, there's always that going on in the background, right? But I do think that it has, it's allowed me to not be so sensitive or not be so fearful because I've always had to deal with this. I've always had like adversity and had to overcome it. I see a lot of young people now, they're just dealing with so much anxiety and fear and worry and all that stuff. And I think I just didn't have time for that because I was always having to like press forward and overcome things constantly. And so I think that was a blessing. And I think, also it does keep me humble. And so I appreciate that. I've had people ask me at shows before, like if you had to if you could have your full sight, but you had to give up your music ability and your singing voice, would you do it? And I was like, oh, that's a brutal question. I don't think I would.
nah, that's that. What kind of trade-off is that? That's
I
not
know.
fair.
It's crazy. People come up to you at the merch table and they ask you these questions.
Right.
What?
Oh my gosh. Like, would you rather, but it's like your actual real life. Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. Yeah. It's interesting because some people work out their theology different around these things. I mean, I'm I'm over here barely on the ADA list. Like restaurants have to accommodate me, that's about it.
Hmm.
But even that, it's like it's a daily conversation. When we travel, I usually buy a crock pot and make my own food and like it's noticeable everywhere I go that like something's wrong because I
Hmm.
can't eat what everyone else is eating, um but it's I don't know where I was going with that other than to say it's part of daily life. But I do think God uses, whether it came from him or not, I have my doubts, but he is going to use it either way, you know? Like,
Yeah, I think he uses it so much for just to help anyone that is dealing with anything. Because when I did the "You Are My Vision," like obviously not that many people in the audience have visual impairment, right? They don't have the same issue that I do. But plenty of people came up to me and said, "Oh my gosh, like I deal with depression or I deal with this." And like your talk so encouraged me. Like it just helps to hear how someone else has overcome adversity.
mhm.
And so that's always was my goal with that talk. And then I've had the opportunity to meet people along the way, like this crazy story where I was performing at this church in the Bay Area, and this lady came up to me and she's like, "Oh my gosh, my daughter is visually impaired. Like, I'm going to bring your CD to her. I'm going to tell her about you. It's going to be so encouraging." I'm like, "That's great." And I totally I didn't forget about it, but I remembered it, but I didn't think about it until like 15 years later. Her daughter goes to APU, and one of her professors is like my friend and tells her about me because he thought that would be encouraging to her. And she's like, "No way, Bree Noble. Oh my gosh, I have her CD." And my mom, it was crazy. And so it's like
That's
this
awesome.
full circle moment. Then I got to like meet her one time, and it's amazing, like the ripple effect that you can have.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we all kind of have a quote unquote thorn. And I think God is in the business of growing us and teaching us and changing us. And I mean, I think when we look at like Romans where it says like he's using all things for
Mhm.
our good, I mean, what's for our good? Like, what does he mean? Like, is it like we're going to end up like richer from it or something? No, it's for our good in that it's transforming us into more like Jesus,
Mhm.
who is the son of suffering.
Right.
When we're acquainted with grief, he's acquainted with our grief. We're brought close to him in suffering. He's close to the broken in a unique way. He's the one that's fellowshipping in the place of suffering. He is with us in the valley in a
Mhm.
way that I don't think we experience totally the same if we're in the on the mountaintop. And
Yeah,
it's
no, that's
weird
very
because you
true.
would think you go through all this, you would think that people like us would doubt the goodness of God. And I'm sure we have our moments, plenty of us, but overall, I'm more convinced of the goodness of God because I've sensed his love and his presence like
Mhm.
so close to me during the suffering. And he's taught me such amazing truths about, and it's more of a juxtaposition too. Like I'm learning about heaven and I'm like, oh heck yes, like I'll be able to do this and I won't have any pain and like it's almost like the longing and the hope for heaven is like even more real.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that. Like, I probably will be able to totally see, or seeing won't matter in
Right.
heaven.
It'll somehow be resolved completely.
Right.
Yes. I think we'll see in different ways too. Like we'll be able to like I don't want to say have superpowers, but like I don't know, like we'll be able to know stuff. Like some people who supposedly have gone to heaven, like, these experiences that and you never know if it's like real.
Right.
But the ones that seem like they are real to me, they talk about how you can communicate with you don't have to like talk physically. You just like know what someone's saying to you, like
Mm.
telepathically. Like cool stuff like that.
Yep.
So we'll
That
probably be
that
able to
would
see behind us and weird stuff. I don't know.
that would be amazing. And you wouldn't have to be able to see. I would say too that like not being able to see has heightened other senses for me, as is known to happen. And so I do think it's actually made me a better musician. Like
Hmm.
overall. Now, obviously, there are certain things that I have to deal with. I print out all of my lyrics in 60-point font
Yeah.
because, back in when I was 20, I could memorize everything. Now my older brain isn't able to remember everything, especially within a 1 week span. So, I need to print out everything, but I'm amazed. Like one of my clients, Ginny Owens, who you probably heard of, she's
Yeah.
totally blind. and she just does amazing things. Like she memorizes everything. She's leading worship at a huge church in New York. She's, she's got like Braille. So sometimes she's using the Braille lyrics, but then she plays the piano. So she has to mostly memorize everything.
Yeah. It's probably just like a word here or there. Like,
yeah, amazing.
She's dope. She's just so good. She's very, very good.
She's amazing. I mean, for what she heard adversity, like she's an incredible musician.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you feel like the Lord has brought you any scriptures or Bible stories, Bible verses about this topic, or about like the suffering you've gone through or the adversity?
I think you're right that I can really identify with like the suffering of Christ. Like I love Lent. Lent is such a great season. And not all denominations celebrate Lent, but I love that we do, because I really can identify with the journey and the suffering of Christ.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a Bible favorite verse or favorite story in general? Doesn't have to be about suffering.
No, I mean, when I was growing up, like I had this Bible story book, and my favorite story was Moses and the plagues. I don't know why. I guess I'm morbid or something. I'm a person that likes true crime and things like that. And so, but I think I realize why I enjoy that story is because it reminds me, as is depicted in Narnia, like God is not a safe lion, right? Jesus is not like always cuddly.
Mm-hmm.
God is not always going to give us the answers that we want. Like sometimes he just outright says no. Sometimes if you don't do what he commands you to do, he's going to punish you. Like, I just think it's really important that we know that God is God. Like, God is all powerful.
Yeah.
He can be your best friend, but he's also like the one that's is the parent. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Nowadays, not everyone likes to think of it like that.
Mm-hmm.
But God, our Savior, our rescuer, our Redeemer, is also the judge of all. I'm on this podcast, we're walking through the book of Revelation, and it's intense. Not everything that's going to happen is pleasant. And yet we know that it's just. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Your favorite story growing up was the plagues. And maybe part of it too is like the power of God and the rescue of his people.
Yes.
It's just amazing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love the part where, he's like, put the blood on the door and you'll be spared. Like, it does show that he is protecting the Israelites.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Talk about supernatural protection.
Yeah. Yeah.
This series is about inner healing. So I wanted to ask, like, what's the biggest thing that God has healed you from? It could be something in your heart. It could be a false belief. It could be a stronghold, a mindset. What is something you feel like God healed you from, and how did he do it?
Oh gosh, I had an idea for this earlier and now I'm not thinking of what I was going to say, but I really do think it goes back to the thorn in the side thing. Like I think he's healed me from a lot of pride that I think would be easy for me to, because when you do have an adversity that you're dealing with, sometimes you have to put up a lot of armor. You have to like try to prove that you're 100 times better than other people because you're already being discounted because of your disability, especially, like I said, growing up when I did. And so I think I have to be perfect. I have to get all straight A's. I have to, all of that kind of thing. And I think he's really healed me from that. And part of that is me working through that and, really trying to listen to him when I hear verses that are related to that and try to commit those to memory and not forget that message and have it come up when it needs to, when the pride is surfacing. But I think some of it is actually just getting older. I turned 50 a couple of years ago, and I feel like everything shifted. I was just like, all of a sudden you're looking more, not that I'm like looking, I'm going to die anytime soon, but how you're looking more toward the eternal versus like the importance of everything that happens here. And having a teenager in high school, I see like everything is so big, like so major. Oh my gosh, I got a whatever on this test, I'm going to die. I'm going to, it's everything is so present. And so I think that, God, after turning 50, I think he's really teaching me like, you do the best you can in this life, but ultimately what you're looking toward is the eternal. And so you don't need to be so hard on yourself, and you don't need to be so prideful, and, you can let down your walls and just try to be part of a community.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's almost like that performance mentality that we can use as a protective mechanism.
Oh, exactly. I mean, that was one of the things when I was first performing. I had this feeling that I absolutely had to keep up that fourth wall. Like, I need to be a professional, and people need to think I'm up on the stage. They need to think of me as being better than them, basically. And once I finally took down the fourth wall, and I realized how much more enjoyable it was to perform, number one, and number two, just like how much more of an impact I could make when they thought of me more as someone that's on their level and is willing to share, and we're going to do this together. So like that was really, really started to get the idea of the You Are My Vision program. And that was always very much like I'm sharing with the audience. It's a give and take. It's not I'm performing for you.
Yeah. What would you tell somebody who's relating? Like, oh, I think I do have some walls up, or I do have some beliefs that I have to be strong and successful.
Ooh, I'm not the best at giving advice. I I think I really think that community is what helps with that. I am always so much better at, like, someone can tell me something, but if I can hear a story of someone who, like I'm telling now, right? A story of someone who's been through it and how they changed and why they changed and all that, I'm much more likely to be open-minded to going that direction than if someone just tells me, "Hey, you need to take down that fourth wall. You're too high and mighty up there." Like, I'm gonna fight against that like heck, right? I need to be in a community of artists. And that was one thing that really helped my music career, is that I got into this community of female artists. And that's why I ended up creating one, because that was really what was the catalyst for me. And I would be able to talk to them like, "Hey, I noticed that, this is happening at my concerts." And they're like, "Well," they'll say like, "Hey, you really need to take down that fourth wall, because here's what happened when I did that." And it somehow, when you're in a community of your peers, it's easier to take hard advice, and it's easier to see how it will change you when you've
Yeah.
seen how it will change others.
Yeah, I think community is so huge, and God uses other people's stories to inspire us. Yeah, that's been a theme in my life too.
Mm.
When I was prideful and performy and perfectionist, it was because I was isolated.
Mm-hmm.
I was isolating myself with my own workaholism and, narrow points of view on stuff. And then when he was really able to like heal and change and transform me with his love, a lot of it was through community. I
Yep.
think, yeah, that's why we're called to like gather, It's to worship him, but it's also to like be with our brothers and sisters in Christ and let them influence us in these ways.
Yeah. And that's what churches are for. I know there's so many people that are like, "I'm religious," or I'm spiritual, I love God, but I hate church. And I get that, because churches are full of drama, because they're full of people. But I also think there are things that you cannot get unless you're in community with God and people.
Yeah. And if you can't go to a church, go to a home church, go to a Bible study, do some sort of connecting with safe people that love God.
Mm-hmm.
Because that isolation really, I think, inhibits our growth.
For sure.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd want to share about this topic? Like anything else that's come to mind?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I feel like I've shared more here than I don't talk about this stuff very often. So it's nice to have a platform for it. And as songwriters, we often put this into music. So I definitely have several songs that I've written around just the adversity and feeling like you're always running for something more, that perfection. You feel like like I said, you always have to do 100 times better than everybody else because you're already like on a lower level. That's kind of how I grew up thinking, because there wasn't all this advocacy around disabled people. And so like I wrote this song called Running, which was basically like, feeling like I was always running uphill. And so, if you can find, that's why I really loved doing a program where I was speaking and I was doing my songs, because then people could take the songs home with them and they could listen to them. They could remember what I said, and hopefully the message would stick with them and they would think, yeah, I feel like I'm running all the time. Like, how can I work on that? So, find some music that really resonates with you and just, listen to it. Put it on when you're out for your walk or whatever. It's going to remind you of that other people are dealing with similar things. For me, that also helps to know that other people, I'm not alone. And then, just speaking the language. They're speaking your language, and they can maybe put some things into words that you haven't even been able to put into words. And now it's put to a song, and now you remember it. That's what I love about music. I always tell our congregation, it's like one of the great things about music is that it helps you remember not only Bible verses, but just messages that come to you from God. And for everybody, it's going to be a different one that resonates. And, that melody is going to help it keep coming back into your head throughout the week.
Yes, that's so true. And that's so powerful. I love that too. Have you had any songs that have been resonating with you lately? Worship songs or anything?
I don't know. I absolutely love singing goodness of God. I'm not sure why. I love it. Like, I think it's because when I first heard that song, it was the CeCe Winans version, and she did it so well. Like, all I can think of is her singing it when I sing it. And I'm like, if I could be even anywhere near as close as that, I thank you, God. Right. So that's one of my favorite absolute ones to lead in worship.
I love that song so much. It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I do that one a lot. Every chance I get. So good. Well, thank you for talking with us today, sharing a little bit of your story and your faith walk and your inner healing journey. I know people are going to relate. I know people are going to resonate with it. So thanks for opening up and sharing your wisdom with us.
You're welcome. And yeah, if you want to find any of those songs I was talking about, Bree Noble on Spotify, I've got some songs that I've written, especially Healing Waters is one of the main ones I wrote. I wrote about that when I was talking about when I was in the hospital and all that. And that was really where that song came out of. And so many people have said to me, like, wow, this song really hit me, whether it was dealing with depression or dealing with an illness or, disability or whatever. I hope it resonates, and I hope that it really, you can walk with it during your healing journey.
I haven't even heard that one. I need to check it out.
Yeah, you should.
And is there any way people can see You're My Vision, like the presentation, or is it just in person only?
Yeah, I haven't done it in a while. It's usually in person only. For a while I had a recorded version that was like a CD. I got a short run of 200, and I sold out of all of them. So I don't actually have it anywhere, but yeah, I mean, I do it live. So if anyone wants to bring me out to their church, I have done it I think I did it recently. I did it for so there's this group called the Lutheran Braille Workers, which they also do large print as well. But they had me come out to their big event last year in Wisconsin, and I did the You Are My Vision presentation, and that was really fun to get back into doing that again.
That is really cool. If people want to book you, they just go to your website?
Yeah, BreeNoblemusic.com.
Perfect. Thank you again. This was really fun.